Today, I'm going to be walking through how to build a Ronin so you can fight the Draconian Skirmish targets in the 2021 raid cycle. Let's get started. Hey everyone, Derpy here. Welcome back to another Battle Pirates video. We're going to start with a brief overview of the whole, then I will go component by component where I'm going to explain what I'm using, what the other options are if you don't have it or want to think slightly differently. And I'm also going to explain my thought processes and the data I'm using to make these decisions. So if you end up changing something or if we get new information that changes, you'll understand that better. Starting out, this is a Submarine. It does have a few upgrades, which I may make a separate video on. The U1 isn't that great, the U2 is a bit better, and the U3 still is kind of meh. Again, no idea what's coming in the X1 upgrade. It does start out with a really high concussive base damage, as well as some pretty healthy base evade, a fairly high combat speed, and it has sonar and cloak efficiency, both of which do not come into play at this point in these targets, and then has a repair time of 3 hours as is standard. And the most important thing here is that it has left and right countermeasure shields here, the Horo. Notice the accuracy here is 400%. This means that it's really good, especially when you're comparing it with the Cormorant anti-torpedo, which has a reload of about 70%. This is a firing angle, so it is not on the entire target, it's to the left and to the right, so you have to drive this thing really well. And how well you're going to drive and how much time you spend in driving is going to be a really big factor in what build you're going for. Let's start out with the weapons. Now the first choices here are pretty easy. Just take the best torpedo you have, which is either the limited mass immune torpedo or the regular torpedo, which I actually don't own yet. It is the Waka, I can't pronounce that word, maybe you can help. Anyway, take one of these torpedoes, load it out on at least 8 weapon slots here. These last 2 slots, you have some choice. You're either going to put on more torpedoes or a Cormorant anti-torpedo. Don't use Gales. Gales do not fire if you're on a submarine, as the submarine is underwater. That won't work. Also, there aren't even any mortars in the target. So these last 2 slots, one of them is going to be a Cormorant, and the other is up for you to decide. Now, let's move on to specials. You're going to start out with an engine, and here you have to make a choice. The 2 options we have are a regular engine, the Reef Rider, which you should be able to get in the Forsaken mission for 110,000 points, which is really inexpensive at this point. This thing has the primary function of boosting your damage and has some other pretty good stats. It has the same exact combat speed as the secondary option, which is the Old Glory engine. This thing you could use, and it has slightly better survival as well as slightly better evade, but it does not have an extra 10% concussive damage. It's basically a 50-50 choice of which one is better. I'm going to use the Reef Rider across all 5 ships, which is just my choice. You can use whichever one you want. If you want to do more damage, use the Reef Rider. If you want to have maybe like 3 or 4% higher concussive survival at the end of the day, go for the Old Glory. That's slot 1, engine. Now the other slots are a lot easier. Slot number 2 is going to be a limited item that came out with the hull, and this is the Bushido battery. If you don't have this one, using something like the concussive battery or the open water warfare battery is your next best option. You know, this thing only gives you 30% concussive damage, and the open water warfare here only gives you 38% concussive damage, as well as splash damage reduction, which is a different story for a different time. But basically, pick one of those 3 options. The highest concussive damage, the better the thing. Next up, we have a slot for, again, a new special. This is the limited Kenjutsu countermeasure system. It gives you concussive accuracy, which is pretty important, as your torpedoes are all concussive weapons, will help them hit the enemy more often. I guarantee the raid will be tuned to have this on. It also boosts your countermeasures, meaning your built-in shields as well, and your Cormorants, so they have a higher range and higher reload. Also, it has a huge chunk of survival, 12.8k. The alternative to this special would be the Signal Amplification Armor as a regular special, but this one here is really good, and most people should already have 5 of those. Now, there's really no other choice here, and people are going to stick this special on. It's really useful for a whole bunch of reasons. Helps your torpedoes, helps your countermeasures, and is a straight boost to your survival. Special slot 4, that we're moving on to, gets into a little bit more nuanced or complicated choice. This is an evade special, and you have 3 options. The first option is the Shikaro Splash Shield. This has 12.8k splash damage reduction, which really doesn't work very well at all, as well as having 35% evade, 40% tactical field resist, and some combat speed. This conflicts with Guidance Scrum of 3, which gives you pure evade, and Hyper 30. You have some choices there. Now, Hyper 30 is an option if you want to be really fast most of the time, but there are a whole bunch of tactical fields in this target that we've seen, so I think you really need to go for this one, although Hyper 30 is the next best option. Note that these are tactical fields, so the slow effect or stun resist from Agility System 4 will not work whatsoever in this target. You need something that says tactical field resist if you want to resist tactical fields. Okay, these last few specials, you're going to go with one older special, which is actually the Liberty Belt, which is essentially the Advanced Concussive Payload 4 or 5 at this point. It gives you more concussive reload and more concussive damage. Great things for that. And this last one is the final special, which is another of the newer ones. It is I can't pronounce these specials, they name them so difficult. It is a torpedo countermeasure special, the Seiya Torpedo Bay. It gives your torpedoes higher critical chance, higher damage. You could also potentially go for the Blister Hot Bat Ray or the Sealed Fire Charge as an alternative. These projectile speed extra from Sealed Fire Charge might come useful if you're really looking for that. I do have some other people thinking of going for something that increases projectile speed even more, like high velocity rounds. Although there are a few things to play off for, I'm going to go with the Seiya Torpedo Bay. It's just a pure escalation special over the previous tier 8.5 version. Now, those are your specials, but I'll come to the end about potentially leaving something off, so we'll get back to this. Now let's move on to armors. So what you're seeing in this target is that there's going to be explosive damage and concussive damage. If you drive really well every single time, you should be able to avoid 99% of the concussive damage. And that's not an exaggeration. So you might think, okay, let's load on 4 explosive armors. Well, I'm not going to do that because it's going to be really hard to do that all the time, and especially if you want to auto, your left and right countermeasure shields, which are the really ones that work very well, they're not going to shoot at everything, especially if you're autoing, so therefore you need some concussive armor. So some people are thinking, let's go 3 concussive armor because just so much of the damage is concussive. If you don't mess up, if you don't drive perfectly, you're going to get hit by some concussive stuff. So they're thinking 3 concussive armors. I'm going to go for 2 of each as a perfect mix. It won't really matter either way once you get up to the U3 bonuses and the U2. U2 doesn't give any survival bonuses. I'm just going to go with 2 of each. If you're someone else who wants to go and try and make things, try and tune something for the best possible results, then maybe you leave a slot blank and maybe you go for 3 concussive. This last slot here is an important one. You either have to choose a torpedo or a cormorant. I'm electing to go with, at this point, 8 to 10 cormorants across the entire fleet is my plan. Now, I'm doing this because I want to auto things if there is an auto target, which means that like half the things I hit, the left and right horo shields under the special abilities won't be very effective because they're only off on the pure left or the pure right side of the target. So I need some countermeasure coverage that works all the time. And by the way, these cormorants work like gales at this point, where they can shoot at something, and if they miss, they have a second shot. So at this point, having 10 total will give you more chances, whereas previously with the Mutineers, when these were released, when they were on the Mutineers' last raid cycle for Skirmish, they would only fire at every torpedo 1 time. Now that they fired every torpedo multiple times, we have a better option here, and it makes more sense to add in 10. It's kind of like your Everest fleet where you have a whole bunch of gales here, but a lot smaller number of anti-missile phalanxes. Okay, this is my final build and is what I'm going to go for. The hull itself does take a few days, and you also have more weapons and stuff you refit on. Just build blanks first, and then the refit with your max slabs and everything will take just under 6 days for the build I have shown here. So it is a pure reduction. Again, people should always be building 3 to 4 blanks first. I'm also doing something as a bit of an experiment this raid cycle where I personally am only building 4 hulls total, counting the flagship, and getting them upgraded a whole lot for the first raid, and using the tokens in the first raid and over that second month to build my final ship. This is an experiment and something you should probably not try to copy if you don't really know what's going on and what you're doing. Now, one note here about what build you're going to want to do. There is a potential thing you can do because some of the stuff is uncertain, so let's just clear away the things that we don't know, the things that we might not want to use yet. Which looks like a few of these, you take off this special, there's some ambiguity here. Do you want 5 cormorants or 10 on the fleet? Do you want 3 concussive or 2 concussive? And what do you want to use for your splash shield special? You can clear these things away and say these are ambiguous. So just build what you have on here for the screen. That's a core build, and pick whichever your favorite engine is. Just build 5 of these things for the first raid total across all your ships. Save a 1-day build token of your flagship just for generic build token for your flagship, and save 4 1-day build tokens for the Ronin. Then it's going to allow you to take this build here, and let me go to one of my actual ships, which has a Gale. I actually built the wrong thing on it purposely for testing. One of these things that's blank. You can save a 1-day build token across 4 ships and save 1 day worth of upgrades in the ambiguous category to put on for this last thing. So maybe you save a weapon, an armor, and a final special. Let's say you're still deciding on what evade special is best. You don't know if it's going to end up being Hyper 30 or if it's going to end up being, say, the Shikaro Splash Shield. So you save this stuff and you're like, okay, I'm going to wait for Derpy to go out and do his live stream and other people to put out raid videos this first hour. I'm going to see whichever one works best. At the end, if it's this version that works best, great. I'll go out and refit, spend 1 day doing that to put whatever works, to put that on. Or if it turns out you want 10 cormorants total, then you change this to a cormorant. You'll change this last one here to a Hyper 30, and you'll change this last special. Maybe you want more balanced armor, so you change that over to explosive. That's still about 1 day's worth of refit you can do. So save some tokens, play smart, maybe even try and get some stuff in the raid. But the final build that I'm going with is this one right here. I don't want you to just copy this one. I want you to understand what I'm putting on and why I'm putting it on here, and not just blindly copying me. I will make sure to put this hash code in the description. There is going to be a Google Doc link. You can open that up. That should show you a whole bunch of builds. It will be under the one labeled the Ronin. Now this is what I'm currently planning to do as of Friday, December 18th. If Kixeye changes some things around more, we get more information on the target, something significant, I will make a clarifying change either as a pinned comment or as its own separate video. Now we've gone on for 13 minutes, so thank you so much for watching to the end. If you have questions about what I'm doing, make sure you leave a comment below and I'll answer them. I'm also really curious of what you yourself are going to be doing. So let me know what armor combination you're using, how many cormorants you're using, as well as what these last few engine and evade specials are. Anyway, I hope this video was helpful. If it was, go ahead and leave a like. And as always, this is Derpy, signing out, helping you be a better pirate.